Hello, everyone. I am here with Gina Gordon. I always feel so weird doing these.
Yeah.
So as we start every episode, Gina, how'd you get here?
Lonnie. Oh my goodness. A very meandering path of yeses and nos. I feel like the no's were actually the challenges, the hardest part. Those were the moments when I could have chosen maybe a traditional route or kind of continue with the footing that I had started on, just take the next step and the next step and you're almost there, and deciding to like completely derail myself and start a new journey or blaze a new trail, and doing that a couple times, I think, during my 20s, which led me into my early 30s, and it was just kind of like follow the yeses, like follow the gut reactions, which may have you move across the country or may have you get out of, an engagement, like things like that. Just felt like, and you hold so tight for so long, days become weeks, become months, and you're like, I'm still here. Am I supposed to still be here? So the no's actually, I think, led me to where I am today, because those were hard paths to get off of, to get back on track. So does that answer it?
Sure. Yeah.
I love the question.
Different answer for everyone.
I know.
So when you say that you have, you listen to your gut and your intuition, what does that feel like? Because I feel like so many people don't even know what that means. Or how do you know the difference between gut instinct and fear?
I think at first you don't. I think at first it's just this like nagging at you. It can show up in some sort of like mild depression where you don't want to get out of bed, or you don't want to do your relationships. Or for me, it was like I constantly started canceling on social events. I was struggling to answer the question, how are you, when people ask, so I do think at first it was just a fear-based emotion that led me to start to ask myself questions. And I think now I know my intuition to be more of a guide that will nudge me, and I can honestly, if I get quiet enough at points in my day or just moments in life, if I get quiet enough, I can hear a voice. It doesn't usually say much, but it's just this one reassuring statement or instinctual, like kind of, sometimes it's an action, it's a call to action, I think it just took some trial and error, and to be honest, I think it just took like living through a couple real pits, and climbing back out and being able, once you're whole again and healed, or once you're like back on a new track or path, whatever you want to call it, when you're on your way to that new thing and you're healthy enough to look backwards, I think that's the one time where looking backwards we can actually be our own best teachers, And I think, I could look backwards those first few times in my 20s and say, that was reacting out of fear, but that was instinct, or that was intuition really speaking to me, like, how do I harness that and do that again and again and again? Because I want to use that throughout my life, but for a while, I don't know that we know it any differently than just to be an emotion, like a recurring emotion, like you said, like fear.
Yeah. So some of the no's that were hard. Are you open and willing to share what some of those no's were, and how that hardship got you to be in a good ship?
A good ship, yeah. A sailing ship, a ship that's moving. I would have answered this question probably a little while ago and said, no, not ready. I do think it takes some time, but now I'm like such an open book about it, because there's a moment where you feel like a failure because of that experience, but once you're healed from it, the failure is actually the gift. So, I think the first one probably came really early, honestly. I think I always think of it as like my adulthood no's, because those are the ones I was in control of. I'm like of legal age, and I'm like out on my own. But I mean, the day I cheated on a test in 4th grade, that was a huge thing, right? And got caught, and like that was a whole that was a whole tailspin. And you know, getting chased by cops in high school, I mean, like that kind of stuff. I think. But that's also a little trial and error, I think, sometimes. There's a little bit of rebellion in there. There's, you know, we're kind of mixed up in like our childhood and how we're being raised and what we're fighting against or forging to be, you know. Yeah. So I think the big no's that come to mind as an adult were being rejected by a few master's programs because it was such a huge risk for me in the first place to even think. I was just your average student. So to even think that I needed this like higher level education kind of felt counterintuitive to me. But that was good for me because it led me to the master's that I needed to be in. And you know, the master's that I ended up in, that program, I really wanted to be in it because it was mission oriented. It was a free master's, but you had to do work and study, and I was in education, so I was being sent to a low-income institution and community, et cetera, and I was so excited about the mission aspect of it. And when I got that letter that said no, it was just like, but this was so me. You know, you think you're such, I start to identify with it. And anyway, a few months later, they came back and said, actually, we have an opening. So sometimes I think no's lead us to a yes or can become a yes. It's all about our reaction, right? That was a big blow. I think the biggest, you know, in life has been through the window of relationships with other people, whether it be in my family, blood relatives, you know, or with men. But yeah, I was in a relationship that kind of followed me for a while as a friendship, you know, and eventually it was meant to be a relationship, and we found ourselves engaged and planning this beautiful wedding, and I just was so detached from the whole thing. Oh, wow. And it was tricky. Yeah. I sat on that for a while. I sat on that no for a long time, and it started to eat me alive. Yeah. Until the life in me just wasn't showing up anymore, you know, so you figure it out. Sometimes you wait a little bit too long. I probably waited a little bit too long in that situation, but the idea of letting down so many people was such a sting. I just couldn't do it. Yeah. And ultimately it was like, you are letting yourself down every single day, and that is going to bring, you know, like you have to go to sleep with yourself at the end of each day, and your partner, but I mean yourself, you know, first and foremost. So that was a huge one. Jobs have come and gone, you know what I mean? Other things have kind of come and gone. When we think there's such a big decision, you know, like I remember some trips that friends were taking, and it was like, oh, but I have this other commitment, and what do I do? You know, because I said I should do the commitment, but I don't want to miss this once in a life. Like those sorts of things that seem like the end of the world, and then they're like water under the bridge 10 years later, you know, but so many of those come and go. But the big ones I think that stick out are for relationships. Yeah.
So going back to the master's, what was the master's in? Education, okay. And then why, so you said you didn't think that you were going to go back and get your master's, so why did you choose to?
Yeah, I was raised by, my dad has his master's, and I just thought I didn't need it, I guess. I chose to because I found out after 2 years of teaching, being single, living in the Chicagoland area, that I wanted more than going to school to teach all day and going to waitress at a restaurant at night. And that was kind of my day-to-day, because I needed ends to meet. And if I'm really honest, right out of college, a bunch of my friends were getting married, and I had like bridal showers to go to and wedding presents to buy, and they weren't all getting married locally. So it was just like accumulating. I think those first couple years out of college, I had 8 weddings at like 23, 24, 20. It was like a lot. I thought, I know this, is a phase in life, but I need, to support myself better than I'm doing. So I wanted to go actually back for a master's to get the pay raise. Just to be able to be more of an independent. I didn't know if I would ever be partnered, and I wanted to stand on my own 2 feet, even if I was, know.
Right.
So, no offense to the Cheesecake Factory, but I didn't want to be, I at one point I had 3 jobs. I was teaching yoga, waitressing, and teaching full-time school. It was like, well, it's a good thing I'm not in a relationship, because I wouldn't have time for anyone else besides all of these jobs.
Right,
yeah.
right.
So it was a financial decision.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say it was mission-driven and that aligned with who you were, tell me more about that.
I was raised Catholic, went to public high school, and just really kind of had a wandering spirituality. It was deeply rooted, and it's certainly been ingrained in me as a child. But what I found was that going through school and studying abroad, and kind of in my early 20s, I really knew that I enjoyed traveling to help in other communities, and I enjoyed learning about the world through a service component. And quite frankly, that's what fit my financial, that was the easy way for me to do it, to travel to help. And knowing that there was so much need in our backyard, that was always the pull for me, is I can find this, in my zip code, why do I continue to leave to go and do this? But I do think that some people are really tugged to stay and do that work, and some people are really pushed to go and do that work. And I was just, at that point, I was in better touch with my intuitive voice, and it was telling me, go. Yeah, go.
So where were some of the places that you went?
I went with a high school. A dear friend of mine brought a group of girls to build a school, revamp a school in the DR. I went back and forth to Ethiopia several times to teach English. We went, those would be the main, that was several summers in a row there in my 20s. And honestly, it was the part of the year that I looked forward to. I did love teaching. But the grind and that pace that I was keeping up kind of felt like a hamster wheel. And the second you go, you breathe, and you get to actually process, and you actually get so much more than you give, I think, in those experiences. But I would say Ethiopia was the main place I went back and forth. Yeah.
Got it.
I'm convinced that I was part Ethiopian in another life, or that I am right now, and we just haven't done the ancestry yet.
Totally.
I should figure it out, because I feel like, there's a piece of me that was born there.
That's cool.
Yeah.
And that's where you got engaged?
And that's where we got engaged, yeah. So fast forward through all the no's, I started listening to the yeses at one point, and that led me to, I continued to go to Ethiopia for the summers. And I guess it was my 4th or maybe my 5th trip over there. I said to the guy I was dating, you've got to come and see this. This place is unbelievable. And he always said, I really want to, it's such a part of you. I had hung all my pictures and stuff. It was everywhere. Yeah, so he came over, and for the first time I traveled as a tourist in the country, which was really neat.
Yeah.
Got to see places through a different lens, and also be by myself as opposed to be leading a team of teachers. So that, you let your guard down in a different way. You switch your hat up, and out of the blue, just one day, we were literally in the middle of this market. Yeah. In a city called Lalibela on a church tour, and I'm like, is this happening? He's down on a knee. Does this translate in all countries? Yeah, it does. I think it does. It still makes sense to me here. This is what's happening. Yeah. It takes you a minute, The Ethiopians definitely didn't know what was going on. We had a crowd around us before you knew it, But it was awesome. It was the perfect place.
Yeah.
And I did not see it coming. It was perfect. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, super cool.
And you met him at Challenge Day.
Yeah.
Right?
I did.
Can you talk about Challenge Day and what it is and how you got there?
Sure. Challenge Day is, I always call it an anti-bullying organization, but I don't know that I properly, I think that's just a quick phrase that I use. I really see it as an SEL. Like I see it as social and emotional learning. And I see it as a workshop on communication. But yeah, it's for middle school and high schoolers. And it's designed to kind of help us have a lot of fun, break down our walls with each other, and just really share our stories. And at the end, the hope is that we recognize we're a lot more alike than we are different. Is it going to totally abolish, online bullying or, no, but gosh, it's a really good start because you get 150 students together in a gym and your staff, administration, parents, several adults in the room, and you play all morning, and then you break up into these small groups and get to have real conversations with an adult's ears in each group, so it's great because you can catch some really big issues that are happening with individuals and hand them over to the professionals that need to be helping them, get them some aid and some support. But you can also start to kind of target and see what's going on as a school community, so it was awesome. I loved it. It was, actually, I found out about it because I was traveling home from one of those weddings. I was teaching, had just been finishing my master's, and the girl sitting next to me and I were reading the same book, 3 Cups of Tea. And we just started talking, and she worked for Challenge Day. And we exchanged emails, and I kept in touch with her, and 2 years later I volunteered at one.
Oh, wow.
And I was living in Chicago at the time, where I'm from, and that was exactly when I was calling off my wedding and making some really big decisions, and I decided to walk away from the classroom at that point and stop teaching. This is about 10 years into teaching for me. And I got a job at Starbucks, and I applied for the position, and 9 months later I moved my butt from Chicago to California. And they introduced me to our kind of coaching staff. You have like a 6-month internship, and I looked at this woman who I had met on the plane 2 years later now, who's now the boss and overseeing all the coaching. It was so ironic. I said, I don't think I can work with that one coach because I don't think I'll ever get the position. And I didn't move myself across the country to not get this job. Like, I need this job. And the person I couldn't work with is now my husband, John.
Funny.
So he had been doing the anti-bullying workshops for 6 years and was great at them. And so we got to do them then for 4 years, travel domestically, and we were put on the international team and got to spend time over in Amsterdam and Belgium because unfortunately bullying is a language that happens in all languages and cultures and schools. So they did some expansion, and we got to do some traveling with it. So it was awesome.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was a great opportunity.
Do you ever miss it?
I don't. But that's not to say that I don't miss the travel. I just, there's a lot of vicarious trauma. And I think that I was maxed out after about 4 years, and he was definitely maxed out after 10. And at some point you feel like, I know enough about what's going on out there now. And I think I don't know if we'd still be doing it. I mean, we were expecting our first kiddo, and that's what took us away from the work, because we felt like we need to take what we've learned and apply it to a smaller setting, bring it all home and stay local to really raise this kiddo proper, the way we want to do it, be the parents we want to be. But what's nice about communities like that, like Challenge Day, is that you're never fully detached. Once part of the community, you're always part of the community, and for a while we were on the call list and would do an occasional workshop, but now we help with training and coaching of new leaders. And
that's awesome. Yeah,
you get to know who's doing the work now, and you feel like you can support them, and that's the way you get to be a part of the community once you leave it.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you do now?
So now I am a full-time mama of 2 and a full-time, I should say part-time, I work from home. I have a health and wellness business that I run from my bedroom, from my laptop, from my cell phone. I never in a million years thought I would be doing a business, but at first I don't think I even admitted that I have a business, but I have a fully functioning storefront online.
Yeah.
With 400 plus products that ships to people's doorway and helps people get healthy, and has an incredible European-based ingredient policy, and that's what I do now. And we use the products. We love them. They've done everything from help my kiddos sleep better to help me lose weight, give me more energy, to help John find out that he has a dairy sensitivity. It's just been awesome. And I share it with my friends and family, and have built a team, and we are really, really blessed by it, actually. So it's kind of an extension of teaching, to be honest.
Right.
Yeah. So it's cool to not feel like you're you had to morph into a whole new person. You just kind of peel back the layers of the onion and realize this is in you all along, you know?
Right.
It's not like you're selling your soul.
Right.
It's just sharing and recognizing that some will be interested and some won't. So we love it because I've been able to keep the kids home with me, but I don't have to be a 24/7 mom either.
Right.
So I get to set my own schedule and own my own time. And we get to choose how we're going to weave our life throughout, you know, the days and weeks and months. And I think with Challenge Day, we felt like we only had time to do life when we weren't working. And everything had to fit around our Challenge Day schedule.
Right.
And that was fine for us for that season. You know, it was fine to live out of a suitcase for that season, but I didn't want to do the whole you go to work and I'll stay home thing. That's just not who I am as a woman. I would have had crazy guilt, I think, and I would have wanted him to be present to do and learn some of the things. You know, you can't nurse the kids, but you can pretty much do everything else. And I wanted to be that kind of partnership. That was just me. So I felt like I needed to figure out how to create that. And I didn't know anything other than teaching and the workshops. It was like, if I don't walk into a school building every day, I don't know how to support myself. You know, like that's what I do. That's what my paperwork says I do. So this was a real big risk, but it's had a real big outcome too. So yeah, grateful. Yeah.
And you discovered it through an old friend.
Yeah, I ran into, I mentioned I studied abroad, so that was like a huge year for me. And I kept in touch with some of those people that I studied abroad with, not all. And I ran into one of the girls who I had lost touch with. It had been 15 years.
Oh, wow.
And I'm surprised we recognized each other because we were both pregnant. But it was like picked right back up where we left off. You know, obviously some new things were happening for both of us, but we ran into each other at a reunion, and we just decided this wasn't enough time. We need to see each other again. So we met for dinner the next night, and she ended up, telling me about this business she had, and everything I knew about her was kind of similar to me on paper. You know, she had a master's, and she started as a teacher. She went the speech pathology route, so she was working in schools and burning the candle at both ends. She had 2 speech path jobs, so unlike me, she didn't, you know, work in a restaurant or anything, but she had 2 jobs in her profession, and they couldn't pay the school loan off, you know. They couldn't pay for the preschool bill for her older kiddo. And so she had tried this for health reasons. And she, you know, had a thyroid thing, had a hypothyroid, and gosh, it just really helped her. And then helped some people that she loved, and she thought, well, I'm handing money to somebody else for every time that I, you know. So she started telling me about it. I think I went from judging to leaning over the table. You know, I just didn't know much about it. She needed to teach me and educate me about what it all looked like and how it really worked. And so yeah, it was fascinating.
So I feel like anytime somebody talks about a company like an Arbonne or an Herbalife, they always think, okay, it's a multi-level marketing company. I'm not interested. The judging part.
Totally.
Why do you think that is, and how do you break that barrier to get people interested?
I think it is because we hold on to negative information sometimes, we latch on, and it's almost easier for our brain to store it than it is to hear the success stories, because we detach from those unless we're part of it. So I think we hear a lot of times from people who've tried and failed. And it is multi-level marketing. And I think the place that it gets misconstrued, again, I had to learn all this because I didn't know it, but the place where like I had to really teach my parents, for example, is that multi-level means that there's 4 levels in my company in Arbonne, and that you get paid a different amount at each level, and that payment is dependent on the work that you put in and the business that you build, and that and then the questions start like, but aren't you making money off other people? But so doesn't it feel like there's a dollar sign on your teammates' heads? Blah 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 blah. So I can only speak for our company, but the way I break that barrier is just through education. It's really getting out the papers. We have this one piece of paper that really changed my whole perspective, and I asked my friend Katie for a copy of it that first night at dinner. I was like, can I just bring this home to my husband? Because I'm not going to remember all this, you know? When you look at it for the first time, I think it makes so much more sense to see it in writing. So I just always use the facts and the figures, you know? This is how much you're going to make at the first level.
Right.
And if you work and work and work, this is how much you're going to make at the top level, you know? I think the biggest barrier is, you know, when you lean on other people, whether it be clients or team members, which is so funny because we're out in the world all the time making somebody else money, but we never think of that as multi-level marketing.
Right.
You know? But we've also been consumers in that way for generations. And this is newer. And just like anything else, we've got to get used to it. Just like social media, just like, you know, so just like online shopping, you know. But I think what we're going to see is that this trend actually takes over because people have less and less time. And the time that they do have, they don't, you know, it's not that fun to go to the mall anymore. People want to jump online. Amazon has us all spoiled. I joke now that I only need to shop at Amazon and Arbonne, and I've got pretty much my personal care and health products covered in Arbonne and everything else covered in Amazon. So I feel like we all work hard based on the criteria that it takes to earn in that, whether it's we're a nurse, you know, or we're a salesperson, or we're a teacher, or we're a fitness instructor. We work hard and we earn money based on the criteria for that job.
Right.
The difference here is that you set your own criteria. So if you're comfortable with $500 a month and that will make a difference for you, then you've got, you know, like I had my friend Katie to lean on and say, yeah, how do I make that much? And it's actually not about people, you know, it's about volume. You know, Target wants to sell so many of a certain brand of this, you know, and once they do that for long enough, they keep that brand, you know. And if I want to, you know, same thing for me, it's about the products. Obviously, people are the consumers, so they help. We, you know, but if you want to make $15,000 a month, well, then, you know, you can go to somebody else and lean on them and say, teach me, like, what is this really going to take?
Right.
And how long is that going to take? And so it's been a lot of personal growth too, you know. I've had to learn what the word coachable means. Because for me in education, I was my own coach.
Right.
Sure, we have administrator, you know, we have administration, but they really dot the I's and cross the T's.
Right.
I had to coach myself to like get my lesson plans done or how I wanted to execute them. I could make it as fun or as boring as I wanted to, you know, and this is different. So it's really relationship building too.
Yep.
So I guess I think I break down the barriers by either just showing people by the way I live my life or sitting down and actually showing them the facts when we're ready to hear, you know? Yeah.
Because it's funny that people won't complain like if they go to Target and buy products that are made in China.
Right.
And yet you could buy products from us and support your friend and get better products than what is made maybe overseas in China. Oh
my gosh, the ingredient policy is, I've never, we're ranked first right now, Arbonne is, for health and wellness from the inside out because we target your whole digestive tract with our nutrition system, you know. I mean, the testimony is crazy. Everything from
Right.
people coming completely off blood pressure medication to my own father, who really tackled his diverticulitis and digestive issues, you know, in his late 60s, and the gamut in between, anxiety meds and sleeping meds. I mean, I've had people come off Ambien, you know, just by changing their diet.
Yeah.
And it's not a fad; it's a lifestyle. It's
Right.
so nice
Right.
that it's like we're equipped. I feel like I'm equipping, making people equipped
Yeah.
with support for sustainability. That's sustainable, you know. I've tried so many Band-Aids for so many issues in the health realm. I feel like so many women have, and it's just, and then you rip it off and you slap another one on for another issue, you know, and it's like, how do I look at my whole self, my emotional self, my spiritual self, my physical self, my mental self, and really heal or nurture it, you know? So that is a really, the ingredient policy. I mean, we ban over 200 toxins and chemicals. You know, the FDA bans 12.
Right.
Again, these are things I didn't know a few years ago.
Yeah.
I was so guilty of filling my cart at stores like Target or going to multiple places. As a consumer, it was like, I get some stuff at Walgreens, but I get some stuff at Target. Well, Target actually is a one-stop shop. But if you wanted like a certain brand, you know, sometimes you had to go to Sephora or
Right.
Nordstrom or whatever. It's one of those things where I've never found a place where I trust the botanically based products so much so that I don't need to try it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't need to try it. I just trust it. So when a new soap comes out or when a new shampoo comes out or when something new comes out, I'm like, yep, I'm down.
Yeah.
I want that.
Yeah.
When I had my children, I didn't need my sisters or my cousins or my friends who already had their kids to like suggest or recommend anything. I was just like, nope, I'm going to go with this.
Yeah.
I can't do better than this. I can't do better than a mineral-based sunscreen. I can't. And you know what? If I go to one of those fancy stores and purchase something for $80, it's going to have been marked up so many times because to get that product on that shelf from the warehouser, you've got to have a lot of things happen, you know? And you've got to pay someone a lot of money to go in. We use all of our own children, consultants, children, you know, the children are all consultants' children. All the women and men are consultants who are actually ambassadors of the brand in their day job, and then they just get fancy pictures taken for the catalog. So it's nice because we cut out everybody. So when your shipment arrives to your door, first of all, I don't have to stock anything in my garage because that sounded awful. I remember sitting at dinner with Katie that night thinking, she's got a shelf of lipstick in her garage.
Like an
That
Avon
sounds
or
awful.
something,
Yeah, exactly. But no, straight from the manufacturer to the consumer's door. And they get an ID number and a password, and you can shop at midnight if you want, you know. So I'll make money in my sleep, and you can stay healthy during the daytime, you know. It's great. It's great. And I think that if you've ever been to Europe for a long period of time, you know, which I had, and you run out of your personal care products and you go into one of their drugstores and you start looking for your products from Walgreens here, and you're like, no, why wouldn't they have so-and-so or such and such? Never dawned on me. Never dawned on me before Arbonne that they don't want our products because they want that tightened, stricter ingredient policy. They've got some things figured out in the EU, so I'm glad that we follow their ingredient policy. I think it's, and that we have been for almost 40 years. They had it figured out from the get.
Right.
Yeah.
So what's next, Gina?
Oh, another big question at the end. You're so smart like that. Oh. A big adventure. We're taking the show on the road. I haven't decided what to call it yet. Maybe that's what we call it. So we are in the process of kind of listening to some no's. John was in a job that just wasn't serving his emotional space, and long-term didn't have the kind of contribution aspect to it that he wanted to be giving to the world. So he was able to kind of have a mutual divorce with that place as people were starting to get fired. That could have happened at some point to him, but instead he walked away, and we really felt like we could lean on Arbonne. Thank goodness we built it to a place where that's possible. And now 6 months later, our daughter, we pulled our kiddos out of preschool for next year, and we decided we're going to rent our house out to some friends who were in need of a place anyway to stay. All the pieces just started to fit together. We've always had this dream of going back abroad again, but without the work, on more of like a sabbatical.
Yeah.
And so we're not going to go abroad. We're going to stay here domestically, but we're going to rent our home and be supported by Arbonne. I'm going to keep working my business from the phone, and we're going to go on a road trip. We're going to spend a chunk of time with my family in Chicago, but we're essentially going to go from coast all the way to coast. Yeah. Nice. From California to Florida and back again. And we're really excited. Yeah. Yeah. And if it goes well, we're going to make it go well. But I mean, you just hope to really learn how you want to incorporate this into your days and weeks and years, and make this a staple in your life, like what Ethiopia used to be for me. I would love to figure out how to bring that kind of education, bring that kind of world awareness and just mission to our family, something we could look forward to annually, something we can plan for and really, and know that something that matters, to us and to others somewhere to serve them. So yeah, we've got some dreaming up to do while we're out there on the road, and what better place to do it, Yep. Hopefully with 2 sleeping kids in the back. Yep. Yeah, so we're doing that in a few weeks. Cool. Thanks for asking. Yeah. We're excited.
Awesome. Anything else you'd want to share with anyone in the world?
I just love you, and I love that you're asking these big questions. We were talking about journaling earlier, and I think, man, these questions, you can fill journals with your own wisdom as long as somebody asks you the right questions. So anyway, thanks for asking.
Yeah, thanks for answering.
Yeah.
Cool.
Cool.
Well, that's it, folks. I'm going to stop recording now.
Bye.